Hi, and welcome to challenge 6 of my 65 days of TypeScript challenges. Um, Today we're going to be looking at a challenge to convert, not to convert actually, to find the length of a tuple type. So given a tuple, you need to create a generic length utility or a generic length type that picks the length of the tuple. And the examples I give here are, we have a tuple of length 4, it has 4 elements, and we have a tuple of length 5, meaning it has 5 elements, and when we use that generic type, we get the length as a type. So here 4, here 5. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the test cases. We're going to find out exactly what is needed of us, and then we're going to, implement our type. But before we do that, I just want to mention that I didn't record challenge 5, and in case you were looking forward to challenge 5, challenge 5 was basically about retrieving the type of the first element of an array, and the main way to do that was just to use a conditional operator. If the array was empty, we wanted to return never. If the array wasn't empty, we just wanted to index into the type, into the first element of the type, and return, the value of that first type. So that was it. And my guess is we're going to be doing something very similar in today's challenge, because we have a tuple, which is basically an array in the type space, and all we want to do is retrieve the length property of that tuple, right? So if you don't know, like every array in JavaScript is basically an object, and an array object has a property length on it. So let's get cracking. First of all, I'll show you explicitly how array objects have length properties, and then we'll just move on to completing this challenge. So first of all, say we knew exactly what the length of our tuple was. Say we knew it was 4. We could specifically check whether our tuple was length 4 by doing the following. We can check whether T extends an object that has a property length with a value of 4, and if it does extend that type, then we just return 4, else we can return 0, we can return never, right? So by doing this, we have passed our first test. So I hope this makes it clear how without having to create an entire array, we can just create an object that imitates an array by having a length property, and check whether the type we're passing in this case, type of Tesla, is of that length, and if it's of that length, we return 4 as the return type. I've created this test type here that we can use to confirm what we're returning. So as you can see, when we pass in type of Tesla, we're returning a type of 4. Now let's move on. Let's move on to first of all solve these two errors. So this means that we're expecting an error, but we're not getting an error. So let's make sure that we structure things in such a way that we do create an error. So to do that, let's focus on this let's focus on what we expect to receive. So we expect to receive some type that's of the subset that falls within the set of any. Now, the thing is, any is too broad. We have a more specific form of type that we expect to receive, which is some sort of array that's read-only because of this ascont assertion. So we're going to first of all make this an array. Okay, so that immediately solves our last two errors. And just for good measure, we could make this. Actually, let's not do that. My guess is that some error will come up when we try to access this array, and that read-only property is not there. So I was going to add the read-only property because all tuples in TypeScript are read-only. They all have the read-only property on them. So you can see Tesla has the read-only property on it. Cool. So let's continue. Let's continue to solve. Let's continue to solve this error, which is yeah, the read-only error that I was just explaining. So it's saying that the type read-only, this type does not satisfy the constraint of any array. So the thing is, we are expecting to receive any array whatsoever, but the type values we're passing are specifically any arrays that are read-only. So we're going to change that to read-only any, and cool, that solves our read-only error. Now let's look at the last error we have, which says type false does not satisfy constraint true. No. Problem here is it's not it's not clear from this error, but the problem is that this type of space x type value has a length 5, or we're expecting a length 5, but we're returning a length 0. So let's just make that explicit. Let's change that to space x, and let's see, what do we get? 0. We're returning a 0 because type of space x length is not 4, and because it's not 4, we're going to the falsy case and returning 0. So we're going to change this to work for both 4, 5 length tuples and any other length tuples by simply going into the tuple that we're being passed in, or the array, read-only array that we're being passed in, and accessing the length property of that array, and voila, that solves all our test cases. But just before I finish, I want to point out that if you try to access the property by doing this, that wouldn't work, because it says it will throw this error saying that length refers to a value, and it's being used as a type here. Essentially, length doesn't exist. I wonder if we created a string whether that would work. Yeah, I thought so. It wouldn't work. And reason being, this is in the value space while this is in the type space. So we wouldn't be able to access a value space variable in the type space. Therefore, we need to be very explicit in the type space to say that we're accessing the type, the length property as a type length of string. Yeah, I hope that makes sense. Well, that's basically challenge 6, and we are done.